Hi guys, today we're going to tackle a very controversial topic. I am going to explain why the Red Pill movement is basically feminism but for men. Now, usually when someone criticizes the Red Pill movement, it's done from a feminist perspective where they basically talk about how it's sexist, how it oppresses women. But what if I told you that the modern version of feminism and the Red Pill movement are basically two sides of the same coin? Now, just a disclaimer, I'm obviously not talking about the standard original version of feminism, the first wave of feminism, so to speak, granting women voting rights, no longer seeing them as second-class citizens. I'm all for that. And obviously, there will always be some exceptions. I know that not every single feminist is like that, not every single red pill guy is like that. I'm talking about the majority of people in those movements here, or at least the loudest ones. But obviously, I'm not talking about the original feminism that started 100 years ago. I'm talking about the modern version of feminism, which basically is no longer feminism anymore, it's just plain misandry. Even though feminists and red pill guys hate each other, they have many common traits. Actually, it's quite amazing how similar they are. They're almost like mirror reflections of each other. So maybe that's why they dislike each other so much, because they see their own traits in the other side. And I'm going to list those traits now. So the first trait is huge victim mentality. Now I get that, we live in a society where some people are more privileged than others. There are different systemic issues. I understand that. I'm not blind to the fact that some people have an easier life than other people. However, there's a difference between just recognizing that fact and making it your whole identity. Whereas the people who identify as either red pillars or feminists, their whole worldview is basically based on the fact that their gender is oppressed by the other gender and oppressed by the system they live in. It's just that feminists blame men and patriarchy, whereas red pillars blame feminism and women. But essentially it's the same thing, because you are seeing the other gender as the enemy and the cause of your issues. And that is a very dangerous mentality, because how are you going to solve your own problems, your own issues in relationships and dating, if your only ideology is that it's all the other gender's fault? You will never take responsibility for your own problems. You'll never try to solve your issues if you believe it's all the other gender's fault. Which brings me to the next point, which is the black and white thinking. So both feminists and manosphere guys, or red pill guys I should say, are extremely judgmental of the opposite gender, and they have like this black and white kind of thinking where the members of opposite gender can only do wrong in their eyes. So they will interpret every single thing a member of the opposite gender has done in the least charitable way possible. For example, a feminist will see a man opening door for her, and she will just assume that, he's condescending or whatever, or a sexist. On the other hand, a manosphere guy will just assume the worst about a woman who hasn't actually done anything wrong. She's just existing on the internet, and he's already like making theories about all the evil she has done. And on the other hand, when someone of their gender does something wrong, then they always defend that person, because they just cannot comprehend that someone of their own gender might have done something bad. And this is like a very childish way of thinking. It's basically like kids in the playground, constantly pointing fingers at each other. Like it's very immature, I will be honest. This brings me to the next point, which is the one that bothers me the most, to be honest, because it's just really depressing and dystopian in my opinion. It's a very transactional approach to relationships. So both feminists and red pill guys, they have like this transactional calculating approach to relationships. They're basically playing tit for tat. Whenever they do something small to a member of the opposite gender, whenever they do a small favor of any kind, they expect something in return of a similar value. So they will never do something nice just because they like a member of the opposite gender. They always expect something in return. They're always like calculating whether their relationship is worth it in their opinion. And it's very sad because, love is not supposed to be about calculating stuff. Obviously, you shouldn't be in a relationship with someone who never tries, never puts any effort into the relationship, and you're the only one who's putting any effort into it because you're being taken advantage of. But you shouldn't calculate every single thing either. And I get that, in the early stages of dating, before you actually get to know someone, you need to be maybe a bit more um, cautious. But once you're in a relationship, if this is your approach, then this is a very cynical way of viewing love. And it's going to make you miserable long term because love is actually about giving and not about receiving. You should be excited to show love and to serve the other person and not unwilling to do so unless you get something in return. And also, one thing I've noticed is that both feminists and manosphere guys in general have a very cynical, nihilistic, consumerist approach to life where the only thing that matters to them is like material goods. They're always like thinking in terms of money. I'm not saying money doesn't matter at all, that you should just, live like a hippie and never calculate any costs. But it's almost like there's nothing more in their worldview. There's no place for love, for sacrifice, for any emotions, any passions. It's like this consumerist mindset where it's only money, fame, status, and all those like superficial qualities that matter to them, which is also very sad and depressing. And this brings me to point number 4. It's hyper independence. Now, this is done by design, this is no accident, but those people think that is their own choice. So I don't know if you have noticed this, but both feminists and manosphere guys have this idea that it's not worth it to get into a relationship nowadays, let alone get married and have kids, because you're being oppressed, you're being taken advantage this way. On one hand, we have feminists who say that if a woman gets married, then she's going to serve the man forever and is oppressive towards women and so on. On the other hand, we have those manosphere guys who say that a man should never get married because it's a bad deal for men, and let alone having kids, like nobody's even considering that. And they have this idea that the best thing for them is to just stay single forever because the opposite gender is just so good and it's just not worth it to start a family with a member of the opposite gender. So this idea of like being hyper independent, like I don't need no man, I don't need no women, it's really toxic and it's obviously leading to a population decrease. And it's all by design. Why do you think there are so many advertisements that are subtly implying that it's better to be single? So many news articles about being single, how someone saying like I broke up with my partner and I'm happier than ever. It's all being promoted. The people in power don't want you to start a family, and unfortunately people are eating this up, so they are falling for this, both manosphere guys and the feminists. Now, point number 5, it's hypocrisy. Both feminists, or like the women who call themselves feminists, I'm not going to get into like the whole argument whether they are actual feminists or not. I'm talking about the women who call themselves feminists, who identify as feminists. So both feminists and manosphere guys are very hypocritical. They practice double standards. They don't live according to the actual traditional gender roles, but they expect the opposite gender to adhere to those roles, which is very hypocritical. On one hand, we have women who call themselves feminists, but they expect a man to pay for her on a date, for example. But they don't want to live according to like the traditional feminine roles. But also you have guys who, for example, say that a man should be allowed to cheat, which is not biblical at all either. And they claim that it's okay for a man to cheat, but not for a woman. Or they say that it's okay for a man to be promiscuous, but not for a woman. This is not traditional mindset at all. According to the truly traditionally minded people, being promiscuous is bad for both genders. And cheating is obviously morally wrong. Doesn't matter which gender is doing it. And the last point is all those people are very bitter and jaded. That's not surprising, because if you are constantly focused on what you can get out of the opposite gender, what value you can extract from the opposite gender without giving anything in return, you are going to turn into a bitter person, because what truly makes us fulfilled and happy is serving the humanity, serving other people, showing love. If you have a closed heart, if you're purposefully holding back on the love you have for another person, you are going to turn bitter and jaded in the end, in the long term. So that's why they all seem so unhappy, you know, like all the happy, fulfilled people, they're all having families, getting married, having kids. And all those manosphere guys and those feminists, they all seem so miserable. Why do you think that is? Because they're unwilling to open their heart towards anyone. They're only focused on their own good. But they're unwilling to share that love with others because they don't want to get taken advantage of by the opposite gender. And this is making them miserable and jaded and bitter. So what is the solution to all of this? The solution is the third way, which is the traditional masculinity and traditional femininity. And not only that, but actually biblical masculinity and femininity. There are actually great descriptions of what it means to be a man and to be a woman in the Bible, what it means to be a wife and a mother and a husband and a father. And this is a great foundation for a thriving marriage, for a thriving society. So essentially, if you want to have a happy relationship, you shouldn't follow the red pill, you shouldn't follow feminism. You should open your heart, become a godly woman or a godly man, follow the Bible, follow the God's teachings, because his ways are perfect and he has a perfect plan for the relationship, or actually the marriage between a man and a woman. And this is what is actually going to make you happy. It may seem harder at first, you know, it requires more sacrifice for sure, but it's going to make you happy and fulfilled in the long term, which is what truly matters, and not in the short term. Try to start a traditional family, find someone who's also traditionally minded, and you are going to have a much better life. And what's most important, you are not going to grow bitter. That's it. Let me know what you think about this video. I know that I have maybe oversimplified some things. I'm not going to, you know, get into details and analyze every single point, but this is like the gist of it. I think you can see now how the manosphere and how the feminism are very similar, and they are both anti-family because they're both designed to destroy the family unit, which is sadly why the population is decreasing in the West. So yeah, that's it. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe if you've liked this video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.